Right. Well, who is? I mean,
Yeah.
even if they say they are, who is? So we've got Putin is well respected there, Trump is well respected there, and everything's being done as possible by the bad guys to keep them apart. But that's not working. They're
Right.
coming together
Right.
more and more every day.
Right.
And uh and they're going to do it despite what the media says and whatever what the minority who are shooting their mouths off are saying. So they're just going to keep doing it. That's one thing I've noticed about Trump and what's going on. He just keeps moving right on through
Right.
despite all the yapping. He just keeps moving.
Hello and welcome to Take Control of Your Liberty with Scott Tregurtha, where we help critical thinkers by giving you the most true and accurate information we can find, which they should be giving you on mainstream media, but are not. So you can decide for yourself and take control of your liberty, your freedom, and your future. And now, here is Scott Tregurtha.
Hello, everybody. We're having our very knowledgeable guest, Paul Glumaz, back again to help take off another layer of confusion concerning Israel and the Middle East. And the reason this is important is that what goes on in the Middle East is very much connected to what's going on in the rest of the world and in the US. So understanding this makes you, the citizen, more aware. And why this is most important is because you have an influence through your votes, your communication, your representatives, etc. And so much has changed since Paul was here in November. We now have a sentient being in the White House who's doing some real moving and shaking worldwide. And since he's back in, some real changes have been taking place in Israel and the rest of the world. So please welcome Paul Glumaz, and let's let him fill us in with what you don't see or hear on your TV news stations. Paul, welcome to Take Control of Your Liberty.
Thank you.
Welcome back, as a matter of fact.
Right.
It's been a few months, and a lot has changed since then.
Yes, indeed.
We have an actual president, a sentient being in the White House, and a few other things have changed. So, but anyway, and things have changed in your specialty, Israel, which is why I wanted to have you back, because now, of course, the hostages have been being released. They're not done being released. There's all kinds of stuff going on there, and it's very confusing as far as I'm concerned. So I wanted to know if you could clear us up a little bit. My first question is basically, what the hell is going on over there?
Okay, so it's very confusing because people are focusing in on the details, and the details are capturing the attention. But what's going on is something very different, because the whole situation is not about Israel. It's not about the Arabs. It's not about Hamas. It's not about any of those things per se. It's about the Middle East as a fulcrum of world policy, of geopolitics, and of politics. So these individual entities, whether it's the Muslim Brotherhood or the radical Israeli settlers movement, or it's the Israeli the Christian Zionist movement that is backing Israel is chosen by God, and all of that stuff. That's all manipulation that's going on in the context of global geopolitics and economics and finances. So Trump's approach to it is not to get into the details, but to actually change the entire dynamic. And he's changing the entire dynamic in two ways from what I can see. First is working with Russia. Once the United States develops a relationship with Russia where they can discuss and figure out how to deal with the Middle East situation, then that will influence the whole situation in the Middle East. That's number one. Number two, Trump is using the situation in Gaza not as a bloody shirt against Israel, but he's proposing the rebuilding of Gaza prior to a solution, not after a solution. He's proposing the rebuilding of Gaza prior to a solution, and he's bringing the entire Arab world into that. Not the World Health, not the United Nations, not the World Bank, not the IMF, not the international financial crowd. He's bringing in the entire Arab world into financing Gaza, so they have a stake in Gaza, and so the entire context is shifting. That's the reality, and that context then creates the basis for resolving the situation along the lines of the Abraham Accords. So on the surface, it's going to appear that Trump is brutally supporting the Israeli fascists against the helpless Palestinians who are being massacred and destroyed in Gaza. Okay, that's one narrative. Okay, so that's one narrative, And then the other narrative is these bloodthirsty terrorists, Hamas, Israel has a right to kill everybody in Gaza because they're all terrorists. All Palestinians in Gaza are terrorists. All of these narratives, right? All of these narratives are being played. But the ground is shifting. So on one hand, Trump is threading the needle, avoiding getting caught in that, but changing the entire background, and then he's threatening to use force if necessary against whatever forces are going to try to wreck that. So now the Muslim Brotherhood, which spawned Hamas, was created by the British in the 1920s. The similar element in Israel and then there's a similar element in Israel, ideological, religious element in Israel about the Jews, and then you have the neocons who developed in the 90s the clean break policy, which means you don't have to have a two-state solution. You can keep a permanent war going in the Middle East, the clean break policy, which is part of the wrecking of the Oslo Accords in the 1990s. So basically,
you could wait. Did you say you could have a permanent war?
Yeah, what the clean break says, you don't have to have a two-state solution. You can have the permanent war between the Palestinians and Israel as a way of dividing the Arab world, as a way of keeping constant conflict in the region.
I don't like that alternative.
But that's what came out of the 90s, the neocons, the clean break policy.
Right.
So that's what's going on, and I don't expect people to understand this. I don't expect people to understand how the ground is shifting, but how these things are going to be dealt with from outside the region by the United States and Russia, and China will probably play some role, and so will India. So this is bringing. He's using the situation to bring these other forces, or open the door for these other forces to come into play potentially. So it's not a done deal. Nothing's certain at this point. But I'm seeing a different dynamic emerging, external to the Middle East, which is going to influence the Middle East.
So what do you see happening external to the Middle East that's going to influence it?
the U.S. is external to the Middle East. The Russians
Yep.
are external to the Middle
Yep.
East. China and India are external to the Middle East, and they are now moving to play a role in a collaborative way rather than, not being
Have
hostage by the Middle East. The Middle East is holding the world hostage, just like the threat of nuclear war is constantly holding the world hostage. These are the things that are used to hold the world hostage. In the case of the Middle East, it's the cutoff of oil. In the case of the Middle East, it's permanent instability. In the case of the Middle East, it's the rationale for creating terrorist organizations and so forth and so on. So the Middle East is one of those key points of control. And it's the British Empire, or the modern form of the British Empire, which has been set this up at the breakdown of the Ottoman Empire, and they've been playing this ever since. And then when the U.S. invaded Iraq, they exacerbated that situation. They got rid of the secular government of Saddam Hussein. I mean, yeah, he was a thug and all of that, but and then they went to get rid of the secular government of Syria, which they succeeded eventually. But the point is, it was to break this area down into permanent conflicts inside the Shia versus Sunni, Kurds versus everybody, Israel. All of this is a permanent war type situation that breeds, and then spread it into North Africa. Then you get the refugees going into Europe, and so forth and so on. It's the breakdown of nations. It's the attack on nations everywhere in the world. But it's using the Islamic, using some of the problems of Islam to foment this, creating the environment where you have the hatred that can be exploited, and so forth and so on. So this is how this thing has been playing out. And the Biden administration and the Obama administration and the previous Bush administration were fully complicit in all of this. Trump is trying to break all of that, and now he has a, and this connects into the Ukrainian situation, because that's all part of surrounding Russia and keeping the division, keeping Russia out of the world, of the dialogue over economic dialogues and so forth and so on. So this whole thing is now falling apart. So the solution to the Middle East isn't going to be in the Middle East. It isn't going to be getting Hamas to do this or the Israelis to do that. It's coming in and saying, okay, we're going to build this. We don't care what you think. Hamas, you're going to have to change your entire approach. We don't care what you think. Israel, you're going to have to participate in this. We don't care what you think. The Saudis are going through, are in right now going through a secularization from their Wahhabi Islamic orientation, which was supporting terrorism before. And then Iran is being told, you're going to get, you're going to work with this, whether, and it's in your interest. And that's how it's going.
and that's Trump's pretty much orchestrating
Yeah, and
that,
I
correct?
think Putin is in agreement with the basics of that, and I think China would support that, and India would support it as well. So because it's a problem, it's a mess. It's a constant sore. Russia's facing this Islamic thing inside their underbelly, right? All of the Islamic potential there. Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, all these places, their potential problems. Georgia, well, not Georgia, but the Chechens as another big issue, and it all feeds into that. And but there is a problem emerging that you're gonna have to deal with, that no one's talking about publicly, and that is, well, some people are. It's the new Ottoman, policy of Erdogan. He's building an Islamic Ottoman he's a Muslim Brotherhood, and he's building an Islamic Ottoman thing, and he's going to have to be dealt with, and that's a problem. So,
Before we go further, now, obviously somebody's orchestrating all this on the negative side. Yeah, Trump's cutting through it, and him and Putin is a great ally in that. And what you're saying is it's basically the British that are uh, behind all this chaos and confusion, right?
right,
And
it's
you're
British
talking
and
about the British financial
British and the French,
empire
British and the French both. Yeah, yeah,
and the French.
yeah.
Okay, but not necessarily the British and French governments, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
the British and French governments would be totally supportive of all the things, of these things.
but the major, now correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, they're supportive and they're doing it. I mean, they're going right along with it, and so was our past administration here in the U.S., right? But what's behind all that is it's not the British people, it's the British financial empire, correct?
It's more than that. It's the crown, it's the British financial empire, but it's also the control, because the whole British financial empire, or the offshore, which is not just British, the offshore financial system is dependent on this.
Right. So it's a financial system that's
Yeah,
orchestrating
but
this.
it's more than a financial system. It's a global system. It's a globalist system. It's a system involving non-governmental institutions. It's a system involving the rules-based order. It's a system involving mediation by the United Nations. You know, you have a conflict, and then the mediators come in, and then that thing goes back and forth forever, and it's a control.
Right.
And
And it
they're not resolving. They don't resolve any issues. They keep the tension going, and it's this method of control that is used. I'll give you an analogy, a personal analogy. A long time ago, I was a clerk in a motel in a seedy district of Buffalo, and the owners got this very vicious um, uh, Belgian Shepherd. And once the Belgian Shepherd got used to me, I had to take the Belgian Shepherd out once in the night, and I was told, don't ever let the Belgian Shepherd off the leash, because we're gonna have a lawsuit. Okay, so the analogy is, you create these vicious dogs, and you have them on a leash, and that's your threat. You have this vicious dog over here. You have this vicious dog over there. They're trained to be vicious and nasty, and they're developed that way. And then you hold. Then you keep you keep them on a leash, and you let them. You go like that. You let them threaten you. Or you might let them loose for a little bit, and that's the control. The constant threat of ideologically developed, psychotic, irregular warfare. But behind the scenes, you have the negotiators, and the mediators and all of that. That's where the power is. The power is there, and this is set up to give them the control. Okay, so you go back to the Oslo Accords. The Oslo Accords were supposed to get 2/3 of the Oslo Accords were financial and economic, and the agreement was that the IMF and the World Bank and other agencies would provide the capital to as part of the agreement with the Palestinians, between the Palestinians and the Israelis. But they reneged on it. So all those financial protocols were reneged on. Now it's the Arabs are coming in with those financial protocols, or the equivalent. The point I'm getting at is, these mediating institutions are the key to the whole situation. So it's all about keeping the constant conflict going. And so, to wreck the Abraham Accords, which Trump had initiated, or the motion towards the Abraham Accords, this whole Hamas thing, Hamas-Israel thing was unleashed. But now that Trump is back, Trump is now moving to outflank that whole process. So how is it that the financial system is connected to the Middle East? Okay, very simple. If you're going to invest in long-term economic projects, you have to secure bonds. You have to have political stability, financial stability, and political stability. There is no political stability in the world if the Middle East situation is in constant conflict, because you could have an oil price increase, you could have a collapse of oil prices, you could have all kinds of terrorism. You don't have the political stability. It's the same thing with the radical ecology movement. You don't have stability in terms of being able to get permits to be able to do the work. So you create an instability, and therefore the financial capital of the world becomes tied up in the speculative financial system when the capital movements have to be restricted, so that they remain in the productive parts of the world economy. You have peace in the Middle East. You have the Abraham Accords that's finally resolved. That's it. No more terrorism, no more war, no more nothing. Then all of a sudden, all this Arab money, all this oil money, all this stuff just parked outside in the offshore financial system. Hey, let's invest here. Let's invest there. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then this is the question of sovereignty. This offshore system, this system of speculation, this system of insecurity is what creates instability for a sovereign nation to function, and actually undermines the sovereignty of all the nations in the region. So that's why, and the freedom to do what they want, and so the United States up until now has acted increasingly since, for quite a while, increasingly as the enforcer of that system. And now that's ended. So now that there's a freak out, and it's just beginning. And the freakouts are just beginning to occur, because what's going to happen is that a lot of nations are going to support this, because this is their opportunity to get out from under the control, to get out from under the blackmail, the economic, political, financial blackmail. And if you recall Storm Over Asia, that 3-hour video that LaRouche did in 1999, it forecast this whole situation to some degree. Storm Over Asia, meaning the deployment of these irregular war forces, irregular war type situations. So we're coming to the end of that, and they it's understood that this is the end of the globalist system, because the globalist system depends on instabilities, permanent wars, permanent guerrilla wars, permanent migration, permanent disruptions of nations. It cannot survive a collaborative effort between the major nations to work together, and that leads to ultimately creation of a financial architecture that promotes the development of nations where there currently is no financial architecture. There is no agreement among nations on how the World financial system is going to suppress the flight of capital. So that the movement of money is not being used to attack, to speculate on currencies, attack nations, and so forth and so on. So anyhow,
So you're saying there's no plan for what now?
I'm saying
there
there's
no plan?
Agreed upon financial architecture between countries, between nations.
And we need one.
We need one.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. That's what I wanted to clarify.
And
And
and we're talking about possibly a new Bretton Woods, a new Bretton Woods, a fixed exchange system, a new Bretton Woods, or something close to a fixed exchange system.
fixed exchange system,
Yeah.
right?
But you
Which got
can't have that if you have this instability in the Middle East.
right. And who benefits from the instability is
That
basically,
is the basis of the system that we're in, that
yeah, it's
globalist system.
the controllers of that financial system,
It's the
which are
basis of their profit making.
right.
Is on
And
it's the basis of the system.
right.
Capital flight. Capital flight is the basis of the system.
A- And the players in that, the actual people who run that, are varied and many, I believe, or actually nowhere near as many as the population.
Right.
There's only
But
really compared to the
most people involved are are doing everything because that's the nature of the system as it is now.
right.
They will change once the system is changed. Once that is ended and something else comes in, they'll adjust to that. Most of them are just going along with that. That's why you have to have the constant instability, although to create the environment for how this works.
So that's very encouraging that there's not a whole army of people who want to keep that system in place. They'll change when things get better with the new
Where
system.
the new uh well, when the new agreements are made, they'll change.
Right. They'll change.
When the
But
rules change, the rules
are
will
there
change.
not, pardon? Say that again.
When the rules change.
When the roles change, right. I was talking over you, so I wanted to make sure you said
Yeah.
that. Um, Now, are there not a certain few that want to keep that regime going no matter what?
Yes,
And who are they?
they are um a a class of people that you don't see
Right.
who are the hereditary continuation of the European aristocracy and whatever allies that they have. And um and their institutional point of reference is the British monarchy, which is all powerful, by the way.
So that would be one entity that wants to keep this system.
That would be the not one entity, but that would be the point of reference for all the other entities.
So that's the head honcho there.
Yes, that's the head honcho, is the monarch of the United Kingdom. So when Trump, makes these comments like, the great state of Canada, and and Trudeau is welcome to our governor's conference and stuff like that, people think he's trying to annex Canada, but what he's actually doing is declaring war on the British Empire, because Canada is not Canada. Canada is part of the British Empire. And
Right.
people don't understand. People in America don't understand. All the laws at the provincial level and all the laws at the federal level in Canada go into orders in council, which means they have to be approved by the monarchy. It's representative, and which will be the lieutenant governors and the governors. Then they don't understand that the parliament is just a show. It's a total top-down control. The Privy Council is appointed, and these are all the former and top people. They're in the Privy Council. The clerk of the Privy Council is the lead civil servant. So the entire civil service bureaucracy is run by the clerk of the Privy Council. You have to understand, there is no give here. Canada is a complete subjugated part of the British Empire. Its diplomatic corps, its government functions in complete harmony and direction from the British monarchy. People don't understand this about Canada. So what Trump is doing is he's declaring war on the British Empire by posing the question of the sovereignty of Canada. The individuals in Canada are subjects. They're not citizens. Their rights are derived from the monarchy. That's who gives them their rights. It's the monarch. Monarch is what gives the Canadian citizens, the Canadian subjects, their rights. They do not have citizenship. They are subjects, and they have, people don't understand, don't have a clue as to how influential the monarchy is in Canada, how influential the monarchy is in the rest of the Commonwealth. You know, British intelligence is run from the monarchy. It's not run from the Parliament. British it's British military intelligence. That's what it is. The military is run by the monarchy. People have no understanding. The city of London, which is a 1 square mile, is run by the monarchy. A governor is appointed for this 1 mile financial center. It is not part of the Canadian political process. It's 1 square mile of banking that is at the center of a whatever $74 trillion world financial structure that goes into the offshore system. The monarch, and then the whole climate change movement is led formerly by Prince Charles and currently by King Charles. The whole thing is institutionally directed by the monarch. And so when Trump says, the great governor of Canada can come to our governor's conference, our governor's meeting, he's declaring war on the British monarchy. Canada will do what Canada will do, but he's calling into effect their allegiance to the monarch.
Did you notice this week that when Britain's prime minister was visiting with Trump, he extended an invitation from King Charles for Trump to go see him?
Yes.
And Trump, I got to admire his diplomacy. Yes, I would love to. It's such an honor. But I would love to see what goes on behind closed doors over there when he's meeting with him. And he was actually, I think this is like the first time that the monarchy has had, I forget what there was a first time for something involved in this. Did you
No,
catch
I don't know. It will be a first time for Charles because he's
it would definitely be a first time for him.
Yeah. I mean,
so I think they just keep trying to get Trump to do what they want him to do. And I think that's what this visit's about, really, that he's invited to. And they're never going to succeed. They are going to get pie in their face every single time, just like Zelensky did yesterday.
Right, but the problem that Trump has is with your enemy that you're in a war with, you want to always offer an alternative way out. That's always the way you wage war. You do not. You always want to open the door for alternatives. And
otherwise you're stuck.
Right. So what Trump is doing with the oligarchy is saying, okay, this is going to be the new way that things are going to work. Do you want to work within that or not? That's my view. Okay, I'm just saying that. That's my view. But you want to work within the new system. Now, I was around when I was meeting with some Chinese. I was up in Canada meeting with some Chinese, with a Chinese leader, the Chinese leader of, that Chinese leader up there. And this was during the whole period of the prior to COVID. And and Trump was imposing tariffs on China and so forth. And, Chinese were not liking that, and, and so forth and so on. And um, and this person had connections into the Chinese establishment, right? So he said, yeah, I mean, we agree that the system, the globalist system sucks, but we did okay with it. Yeah, you did. You took advantage of it. However, so what rules does Trump want us to replace it with? So he was saying, what rules does Trump want to replace it with? And well, Trump was not in a position, in a strong enough position in his first term to be able to present the alternative to the existing system. Okay.
Right.
And so the House of Lords put out a report in 2018 saying that the system, or the special relationship between the U.S. and the British Empire, could survive one term, but not two.
Right. Right. I
So
remember.
essentially, now we have the second term, and also So now the question is that's on the minds of the Chinese. What has to be on the minds of the Chinese? Okay, we know that Trump doesn't like the system. He's going to do the tariffs. He's going to do this and this. What alternative system is going to come in? And then the Chinese are very tough negotiators. So at some point, they're going to be negotiating, and hopefully they'll have the four powers come together: Russia, China, India, and the U.S.
Right.
But the point is that this is going to have to be dealt with. You're going to have to change the whole global financial structure to accommodate the necessary economic development that nations have. Now, nations are in deep trouble. There are demographic declines going on all over the world. You have these massive immigration problems. You have a lot of dislocation. You have a lot of the drug trade and organized criminal activity going on, undermining economic development. You have the green climate, net zero thing is undermining economic development. Damn near destroyed Germany, may have destroyed Germany, and so forth and so on. So you got to clear all that out, and that you can't do. One nation can't do that. You have to have nations collaborating on that. So that's what I hope will be coming.
Well, it seems like it, because Trump is very much into pulling all these four major powers together, right? Russia, the U.S., Russia, China, and India,
Well,
right?
Trump is committed to the outcomes. Trump is committed to the outcome, that kind of
Yes.
outcome. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's committed to having the four together. I'm saying that's an inevitability of his commitment to those outcomes.
Right. It's kind of a natural
Progression, yes.
progression there.
Yeah.
And he is taking people that are, he's being accused of, why are you being so nice to our enemies?
Right.
It's like, because we don't want them to be our enemies. We need to work with them. And do you have confidence he's going to pull things together? And I do personally. I think he's
Well, my always in the background is my concern about
yes.
I have two concerns.
Right.
One is as a last resort, he gets whacked out. He gets whacked.
Right.
Okay, so
Right.
that's the first one. The second one is, I don't know how true this is, but my secondary concern is that the crown, King Charles, has independent control over the nuclear button for whatever nuclear arsenal
In Great Britain,
in Great Britain. Yeah,
he
and
does have that.
yeah, I think so. There was a period where Jeremy Corbyn of the Labour Party in Great Britain was trying to get that removed. So I'm not so sure about that. Now, allegedly, I haven't done the research on that, but I believe that there's some kind of treaty with the United States that they can't use nuclear weapons independently of the United States. but I suspect that he has that capability, that he could launch a nuclear attack independent of the United States. Of course, that would wipe out United Kingdom, but I don't think these people like him care about that. So I'm very concerned about that. That's the second concern that I have.
Yeah, that could be considered a crazy concern, except that people don't. I mean, people have to realize what kind of people these are that do this. They constantly do things that will destroy themselves. Also, they're just that kind of people. Plus, the guy has the means to make sure at least he and a group of people around him survive. And they're nuts. I mean, they're
Yeah,
absolutely nuts. You just can't put it past them. Now, I'm thinking positive. I'm thinking more positively than that, but that's out there,
yeah, not
and
I can't vouch for that, but
yeah, but
I think that's the case.
it's one of those it's one of those realities that somebody could do that.
Right.
That could be done. If it's not King Charles, it could be done by someone else. But
I doubt someone
yeah,
else would do it. I think that's the most likely. Uh, that's the most likely source of it.
well, considering he wants to reduce the population of the planet, I mean, it goes right along with his thinking. That would certainly do it, wouldn't it? Um, we wouldn't have to worry about birth control anymore. Uh, but uh, now, when you say it's it all essentially comes from the crown, right?
the
Uh,
the point of reference.
the po-
Okay, the point of reference. I mean,
yeah, where everything hinges on, right? Where everything
point of
pivots
reference.
from
That's where everyone looks to for
direction. Yeah,
for the directionality.
yeah,
Donald Trump is becoming the point of reference for the alternative.
right. And that really pisses.
I use the term point of reference because it's not a simple um, direct relationship. It's 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 high. It's This is the point of reference. He's saying this. They're doing this. It may not even be public. It's a point of reference for uh for the orientation. Okay, so we're now orientated to the WEF mentality, the whole climate change, all of that, and then that's imported into the cities of North America and the United States, and we have a new ideology for that. We have different ideologies for that, and that's been going on for a long time. So now, and we have a culture that goes with it. The post, uh, and we have a culture that goes with it. We have everything that goes with that orientation. So you become part of this movement. You become part of that movement. You become part of that movement. And you don't know that you're part of a bigger orientation of a transformation. You only know that if you step outside of your and look at it from a higher, from the bigger level. Then you can see how these things are coming together. And the use of AI to control a population, all of that. And so all of that is now being challenged by a different point of reference. And the important point about Donald Trump is not just Donald Trump as a person, it's the Constitution, which created two fundamental things that have a direct bearing on this. One is the institution of the presidency, which has real power, almost equal to, if not more power than a monarch would have over a country, potentially. And two, the ability of Congress to issue money as a sovereign nation. So it's a sovereign nation that can issue money. It has two fundamental things that will have a profound impact on the planet, because it was the return of Donald Trump that was the point of reference for the political process of the takeover, of the beginning takeover of the Republican Party, of which I was a part of here in Washington State. So similarly, it's the point of reference of the British monarchy, of the British monarch, which is the point of reference for the entire oligarchy of the Western world.
Got it. So if someone, like you said, people don't realize all this for the most part. So when you say this to people, like, let's say you say, well, the monarch of Great Britain is pulling all the strings, right?
It's not pulling the strings.
Well, all right, let me reword that.
Okay.
Is the point of reference.
Right. That's better.
Okay? Yeah, so if somebody does say they're pulling all the strings, that's what messes people up. It's much easier to believe, and it makes much more sense that they are a point of reference. So they're a point of reference, and Trump is a point of reference. So it's not like when people say it's the British or it's the monarchy that's doing all this, it's not that they're pulling a string or pushing a button or putting out orders necessarily. It's they are a point of reference that the corporations and all these organizations are looking to make their moves.
Because it's the way the world works.
Right. All right.
Has worked for a long time.
Right. So now what has to happen here, which makes it much more encouraging, you don't have to have a war against the monarch of Great Britain, right? You just need the reference point to change. And it is. And Trump is doing that.
Exactly. And from the reference point come different institutions, come different agreements, come everything.
Right. And but if you'll notice, if we all will notice, and this is the thing, if anybody says prove it, you really just need to look at what's happening. If people will notice, and it's very noticeable, that, we were just talking about Trump is persuading and he's into getting along with people like Putin and China and people who are considered our enemies, right? He's working with them. And if you'll notice, and I know you notice, the media and these other entities of the world are making him wrong for doing that and saying, look at him, he's conspiring with the enemy to do our country. And look at him, he's a pawn. I just heard it on these liberal news stations. He's a pawn of Putin now. He's under direct control of Putin. So look at where that's coming from, right? I mean, who would want to do that? And that would be that other reference point there.
Yes.
Right. They don't want the reference point to be Trump.
But embedded in the other reference point is a system of financial, a system of lobbying, a system of everything. So once the relationship, a stable relationship with Russia is consolidated, it's the end of the world order. That's what you have to...
Say that one more time.
Once a consolidated relationship with Russia occurs. Now, where a normalized, consolidated relationship with Russia occurs with full diplomatic
between the U.S. and Russia, you mean?
Between the United States and Russia.
Right.
Once that is consolidated and there's open channels of dialogue and discussion so that Russians know where our position is, we know what their position is, and there's no mediating entity in the middle that's saying, no, that's not our position, no, that's not Russia's position. If it's clear that we know what Russia's position is, and we know it's not a trick, we know it's not a scam, and they know what our position is, and so forth, that is when the world order is done. The current globalist system is finished at that point. Because from then on, there is no intermediation going on between Russia and the United States. It's a direct relationship. That's what Lyndon LaRouche was trying to do with the SDI with Ronald Reagan. He was trying to establish a collaboration on the SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative, between Russia and between the Soviet Union and the United States. Once that happens, then you don't have this mediation by, the globalists like Kissinger and all these people. They, you never know, it's this constant, it's not allowing the third party to mediate the relationship. The rules-based order is these other parties are mediating the relationship. You have the Cold War, which is being mediated by the British. You have the détente, which is being mediated by the British. You have all of that. Once you have that direct relationship, it's over for the globalists.
When you say mediated by the British, you mean the British monarch?
Mediated by their diplomatic and other channels.
Right.
Because the British have their own channels into Russia. They have their own channels into the Soviet Union. They have their channels into the United States, and they can play them off against each other. This is how they work. This is how they work. So the British go to these other countries, say, okay, we understand you're having a problem with the United States. We can help you. Right? So then they will run anti-American operations in those countries at the same time they're running the policies of the United States or influencing the policies of the United States. So it's getting that third party out of the picture that is so important. So the relationships among nations, especially the primary relationship being the U.S. and Russia, is not mediated.
Right. And Trump is doing that.
That's what he's trying to do.
Yep. And that got him shot. And it got him Russiagated a while ago, and that was all initiated by the British intelligence, basically.
Right.
Which Christopher Steele.
All of their networks, and they can deploy their networks, and they can do that because they have the overview.
Right. Christopher Steele, who wrote the Steele dossier, which was the big incrimination of Trump with the Russian collusion, is of British intelligence. And there's a million things like that we don't have time to cover here, but anybody who doubts what Paul is saying here, they just need to research, and Paul and I would be more than happy to help if you just contact me, because it is a real confused mess, and they're very good at it. Because let's just look at one thing. We're all fighting each other, and we're all fighting each other, that's for sure, and nobody really knows why. We're just fighting each other. Russia against the U.S., all these powers that should be working together are fighting each other, and then all of us citizens are fighting each other on Facebook and wherever else we are. Nobody really knows the real truth. We just keep trying to push our own truth, and these guys, if you really trace it down, you'll find out who's instigating the whole thing.
Okay.
So, I mean, does that sound about right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, now we started off with what's going on in Israel, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, we didn't just branch off here because we got onto a bunch of interesting subjects that had nothing to do with Israel. We got off here because it's all related. And so we're reaching toward the end here. Why don't you bring it home to bring it back to how all this relates to what's going on in Israel?
Okay. The Israeli situation is very complicated. You have the Mizrahi, I guess they call them Mizrahi Jews. These are Jews from the Middle East, and they have a different culture. They're a lot more like the Arabs. Then you have the European Jews that came in, and you have the extreme Orthodox Jews that don't want to do military service, and you have mafias galore. You have a Russian mafia in there. I mean, it's a Russian Jewish mafia. So you got a lot of different things going on. Um, and then the constant war has had its impact on the Jewish population, on the Israeli population. The constant and the hatred of the Palestinians and the fear of the Palestinians, and all of this is created quite a mess. And Bibi Netanyahu is facing criminal charges, which if he were not prime minister, he would be subject to. And he's made alliances with the most radically um, expansionist elements in his in the political spectrum, and it is a parliamentary system. So, um, so, but there's one person that's probably more popular in Israel than Netanyahu, and that is Donald Trump. So Donald Trump has leverage over Netanyahu because of his popularity, and that he's going to exploit that. And the other person that has a significant influence in Israel is Vladimir Putin. He has maintained relations with the Israeli population through the diaspora of Russian Jews, and he's maintained a very principled relationship with in terms of not blaming Israel for anything, but acting to deter Israel from certain things. So those two relationships to Israel is not is key to dealing with the situation. So I don't know how it's going to shake out in the Israeli population, but the fact that Trump is moving to get the Arabs involved, not in going to war with Israel, but in building up Gaza, is a big shift. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, so that's where we're at with Israel now, as far as you can tell.
Yeah, and I'm not like an expert or anything. So
Right. Well, who is? I mean,
yeah,
even if they say they are, who is? So we've got Putin is well respected there, Trump is well respected there, and everything's being done as possible by the bad guys to keep them apart. But that's not working. They're
right,
coming together
right,
more and more every day,
right,
and they're going to do it despite what the media says and what the minority who are shooting their mouths off are saying. So they're just going to keep doing it. That's one thing I've noticed about Trump and what's going on. He just keeps moving right on through,
right.
despite all the yapping. He just keeps moving.
Yeah.
So, well, I think that pretty much brings us to a close here. Except, I had one more question. You brought up the criminal charges against Netanyahu. What exactly is he being charged?
It's some kind of bribery scandal. I don't know all the details, but it's a bribery issue.
Is it for real?
Yes, it's for real, but that's normal for Israeli politics.
Got it. Got it. Well, he's got some trouble in there. So anyway, well, thank you for sharing that. I hope we've taken a layer off of the confusion. I mean, it comes off in layers. It's such a morass of confusion that you just don't get it handled in an hour.
Okay.
But I would say everybody, you can contact me through my website. My email address is on there. I can contact Paul. We're more than happy to share with people who are interested in following up on this. So, Paul, thank you so much for
Okay.
showing up here. Anything else before we
No,
go?
we're fine. We're fine.
We're
Okay.
good for now.
Thank you, Scott.
I'll,
Okay.
I'll invite you back when everything changes again in 2 weeks.
Okay. Okay. All right.
All right, Paul, and hang
Okay.
on for me after we say goodbye,
Okay.
okay?
All right. Okay.
All right, take care. Thank you all for listening. Please remember to like or subscribe or both, depending on which platform you're viewing or listening on. I hope you've come out of this interview a little more informed on the subject of Israel, the Middle East, and how it affects the rest of the world, and who the reference points are. One side trying to make things go right for the greater good of mankind, while the other side is doing their best to suppress our progress and keep us fighting each other instead of handling the modern British Empire or whatever you want to call them. If you have any questions or comments about what we discussed today, my contact info is on my website at takecontrolofyourliberty.com and in the show notes. So please feel free to contact me and I will get back to you. And until next time, remember to take control of your liberty because you don't want anyone doing that but you.